And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, but probably mostly ladies because that's what we have in the true crime community. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you here. Good to be here. I do not have an introduction, like a musical introduction for this channel yet. I'm working on it, just testing out, music and video and stuff like that. But I am excited to get into this stream of the sentencing hearing of Chris Watts. Do you know that it was almost exactly 5 years ago? It was on November 19th, 2018, when this sentencing hearing took place that we're going to go over in a minute. And it didn't even dawn on me until, I started really looking into it. I knew that it was 5 years ago, but I forgot that it was November 19th. It was the week of Thanksgiving. And I remember that because Cindy Watts, Chris's mother, had a series of phone calls. Hello, that Kels. Had a series of phone calls with him, in the jail before the hearing. And, they were she was saying she wanted to come down to support him. And he was like, oh, that's Thanksgiving week. She's like, well, I want to be there. I want to be there. So, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to note who was there, who wasn't there. There was so much baggage going into this hearing. There's so much context and so much emotion with the people who are there and walking in, and it's really interesting to look back on it knowing what we know now. But a couple of quick notes that I wanted to make before we jump into the Chris Watts hearing is some things that are going on this week. So I don't know if any of you watched Alex Murdaugh yesterday was sentenced in his financial crimes case. And of course, he made it about, when he gave his speech, he made it about him. And afterward, when the judge gave him his sentencing, he said, all I see really is emptiness from you. And I was struck by one thing that I want to show you that Alex Murdaugh said. It was probably the only truthful thing that Alex Murdaugh has ever said in his entire dang life. And I'm going to show it to you. It's a very small, very short portion. I'm going to show this to you because truly, this has got to be the only truthful thing that Alex Murdaugh has ever said to anybody, in my opinion. Watch this.
That bothered me was knowing how I hurt the ones I love the most, the worst. And you all are included in that sentence. I hope you know that.
Right? These people, what we've learned over the years, we were brought up on stranger danger, right? Stranger danger, look out for the strangers. And that's true. But more than that, we have to understand that are dogging us, right? And Alex Murdaugh's case is one of those cases. The other thing I wanted to show you guys was something, I've been monitoring the Young Thug Life trial, and I streamed the disastrous opening arguments the other day. It was kind of, in all honesty, it was kind of a shit show. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of a shit show, but it was interesting. there's so many cats to wrangle in this Young Thug Life case. But what I thought was interesting was the way that that Jeffrey Williams is allegedly the leader of Young Thug Life, okay, or Young Slime Life, or whatever. And his defense attorneys and the defense attorneys of the other co-defendants are trying to they're trying to just push off any claims that Jeffrey Williams is part of a criminal street gang, that Young YSL is simply a music label and it's all about love and caring and support. But today they have a expert witness on the stand who's explaining all the origins of Young Slime Life and how it's part of a blood gang and everything. But I thought that Jeffrey Williams's lawyer's explanation for what thug stands for was absolutely I'm sorry. I can't with it. Let me show you it real quick.
He would be truly humble under God. That's what thug means.
I'm sorry. I'm not going for it. Truly thug for them means truly humble under God. Now, if the evidence in that trial comes out to show that all their actions show that they are truly humble under God, then I'll believe it. And I'm not saying that there isn't some part of, Jeffrey Williams and his posse that isn't truly humble under God, but I truly don't believe I find it stretches credulity to say that thug stands for truly humble under God. I just, it slightly insults our intelligence, especially considering the things that are being said on the stand today by the expert witness. But anyway, but let's get to the main thing that we're here to talk about today. So if you followed the Chris Watts, let me take you back to the timeline of the Watts case, okay? Chris Watts has pleaded guilty. Hello, Just Dawn. Chris Watts has pleaded guilty to the murders of his wife, his pregnant wife, Shanann. She's pregnant with their boy child, Nico, and their two daughters, Cece and Bella. Okay. We know this now. He is serving several life sentences. We know that now. Okay. The murders happened on August 13th, 2018. This hearing takes place on November 19th, 2018. So several months have passed: August, September, October, November. The 3 months have passed basically between the arrest and this sentencing. And between that time, Chris, at first, he tried to deny, he tried to pretend that he was the grieved husband of a missing wife. He doesn't know where she is. He goes on camera on his porch and he tries to say, I just don't know where she is, and it's so empty here without her and my kids, and I just want anybody to find her. Hardly anybody believed him. Then 3 days later, basically, they after they have questioned him and they've done a polygraph test on him and he's failed, he confesses, but he doesn't confess to everything. He says his first confession. He speaks his first confession, and this first confession is, I caught Shanann killing our children, so I killed her. That was his confession. And his father was in the room around the time his father was basically in the room for the majority of this explanation and confession. So he has his father believing. I don't think the detectives believe it at all, but he has his father believing, who's in the room with him, who also has no love lost for Shanann. The family, that Chris's family did not really like Shanann very much. So Chris knows that he's kind of pulling on this feeling that his parents already have for Shanann. And he's saying, yeah, well, she was this way. I found her killing my kids, so I killed her. And his father believes him. Then his parents, his parents leave, and as far as they know, that's what it is. And Cindy does some interviews on TV that come off terribly, and she talks about Shanann like she's a terrible person and they never got along. And in her mind, Shanann is guilty of killing their children, and Chris Watts only killed her because she's a demanding wife and whatever. Hey, that Ellen. So that's what's happened. And then in the meantime, the detectives are building the case and they're working with Chris, and lo and behold, he decides he's going to just confess and plead guilty to everything. And his parents are, now we know, blindsided, just completely blindsided by his deciding that he's going to plead guilty, take a plea deal. And in the course of this hearing, they are absolutely beside themselves because they feel that this news has been dropped on them like a ton of bricks. They cannot understand, they cannot get it through their head that he has confessed to all of them, because even though this guy is such a manipulator, right? That even though he has now pled guilty to all of this stuff, he still has his parents believing that Shanann killed the girls. So they're even going to walk out of this hearing still believing, still insisting that Shanann killed the girls. And they go, as a lot of us know, they go onto YouTube and they basically start a campaign of getting Chris Watts a new trial based on all kinds of ridiculous things. And of course, many YouTubers take advantage of their vulnerability and their intense desire to not believe that their son could have killed their grandchildren. And they take advantage of that. And here we are today, 5 years later, where there was a fraudulent nonprofit put together for them where they were exploited through that. And now they've claimed that they were forged into that nonprofit. Their whole channel that was built around, just them being the only one talking to Chris Watts. It was just a whole shit show. It was all absurd. So, but we're going to, with that background knowledge, we're going to watch and kind of talk through all the things that go on, in this sentencing hearing. And as we hit play, what we're going to see pretty much first is, the gallery is already seated. It's pretty quiet, somewhat intense in the room. There's people standing around, like guards and, bailiffs, making sure everything's going to be copacetic in the room. And then they open the doors to let the family and the actual and the defendant in. So here we go. Let me know if you can't hear, if I need to turn it up or anything. So when you keep your eyes to the right of the frame, and you'll start to see people walking in. Hey, Caroline. It's weird that it keeps doing this. Hold on just a sec. There we go. So let me back this up a little bit. So there's right there is Frank Rusek, Sandra Rusek, Frankie Rusek Jr., and that's Shanann's family. And you can see how, imagine how it must feel for them to be walking into this room, right? They're just 3 months ago, their entire rest of their family was killed by their son-in-law, the man that they had a good relationship with. For the most part, I mean, they might have had a tense relationship with his family, but they really didn't have a problem with Chris. They loved Chris. In fact, before this hearing, they were asked by the prosecutors about the death penalty. I mean, death penalty could be on the table for, a case like this because he's pleading guilty to killing three people and a fetus, and his unborn child. So that is very legitimately on the table. And they said, no, we don't want to see the death penalty here. And there's other technical reasons for it too, legal reasons. And in Colorado, it's unlikely to happen. There are people sitting on death row there forever. But point being, they were already asked death penalty, yes or no, and they said no. The Shanann's parents said no.
Thank you.
Governor John Walsh and Catherine Harold on behalf of Mr. Wells.
Thank you.
They didn't show. Sorry, I'm not sure why it jumped ahead because it's showing Chris walking in too.
Thank you.
Governor John Walsh and Catherine Harold on behalf of Mr. Wells.
Thank you. Mr. Rourke, did you want to make a record regarding compliance with the Victims' Rights Act?
Your Honor, I will. Your Honor, present in the courtroom are Frank Rusek, Sandy Rusek, and Frank Rusek Jr. They are Shanann's mom, dad, and brother. They have been fully advised of the nature of the.
So look at how Chris is all hunched over, and to me, I remember watching this from the very at that time. I mean, people were glued to this at that time. There are like 3 million views on this video in and of itself. Okay. This video we're watching. And because it was so shocking. It was so shocking to hear that 2 little children were placed in oil tanks by their father. Okay. And, so then we get to this hearing and the prosecutor stands up and you see Chris just cowering over there in the corner. And probably what's going through his mind is, and you think about a person like Chris. Chris is just like this for whatever reason, for whatever psychological, medical reason, is a people pleaser. He wants everybody to love and like him. He doesn't want to be seen as a murderer. And today is his day to be seen as a murderer, and he's just absolutely cowering and shrinking at the idea of all the people he loves the most. His parents. His sister isn't there. She didn't come to the hearing, okay, which is interesting. His parents, his mother and father, his father, who he apparently idolizes, are going to be coming in and hearing that he's a murderer. So you could see him cowering under that, not facing the idea that, yeah, he actually did this. And we know he did this. He knows he did this. We know he did this. But he's still trying to play this game of I'm this shrinking flower to his parents and the people who love him and the people he's trying to convince that he should still get some sort of trial. And, I believe even to this day, that game is being played of, I did do it. There was somebody else there. I didn't do it. Oh, it's still this mind fuck of did Chris do it or not? And I don't think his parents still to this day believe that he actually did it. They'll say they believe he did it, but then they'll go into chats and YouTube and defend him, saying things that make you believe they don't think he did it. It's really, really, that is how manipulative people can be and how easy it is to manipulate vulnerable people.
Proceedings today. Also, based upon the order that the court entered last week, I can tell the court that Mr. and Cindy Watts are present in the courtroom as well. They've also had opportunity to meet with representatives from my office over the weekend to discuss the nature of the hearing today. I believe that we are fully in compliance with the Victims' Rights Act.
Thank you.
Now, my understanding is that Cindy and Ronnie would say, no, we were bamboozled. We didn't get that chance. We tried to talk to them. We tried to talk to Chris. We didn't get to talk to anybody. We were just railroaded. And, I've said this before. My response to that is that, Chris is a grown man. His parents don't have to be briefed in on everything. And his parents don't really have no say or authority over what happens in his case. He's a grown man. He's at this point 34 or something like that. I forget exactly how old he was, but he's a grown man. So they don't have any authority over what decision is made about his plea.
So what I would like to do is explain the procedures that we're going to use regarding the sentencing hearing. Let me first say that I realize that the sentencing hearing is emotional for many of us. And I expect that your behavior in the courtroom, both in this courtroom and the overflow courtroom, is appropriate. If the court determines that your demeanor and behavior while in the courtroom during, be mindful of that. If you need to turn off your electronic devices, please do so now. So these are the procedures that we are going to have not been called by the prosecution or the defense or any other defined.
Like, look how tight his jaw is set and how he's almost scowling, like he's angry, like, how dare you put me through this? My God.
Victims under the Victims' Rights Act, they will have an opportunity to make a statement to the court as it relates to their rights under the Victims' Rights Act. Thereafter, the prosecution will have an opportunity to argue. The defense will have an opportunity to make an argument. If Mr. Watts chooses to, he will have an opportunity to make a statement, and then the court.
The coward did not make a statement.
Will impose a sentence in this case. Does everybody understand? Okay. And so, Mr. Rourke, are you going to be speaking on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor, I am.
And you are welcome to present evidence.
Thank you. Your Honor, if I may approach, I want to tender to the court would have been marked as sentencing exhibits 1 through 21 inclusive. I have provided copies of these to defense counsel.
Thank you.
Now, there's been a lot said about DA Rourke, which I have stopped at him mid-walk there. I don't have any particularly bad or good things to say about him, but I do recall him saying on a number of occasions that this particular case changed him. And it changed several people on the force. And it actually caused the early, among other things, caused the early retirement of somebody who was just so incredibly affected by what they saw when they were recovering the girls. So he whatever you want to say about him, and he does get some facts wrong in this, sentencing pleading or claim that he makes, what in the speech that he makes before the sentencing, but they had a lot of passion about this case and they put a lot of care into it.
Your Honor, photographs 1 through 21, sentencing exhibits 1 through 21 represent a number of different photographs that are in discovery that Shanann's mother and father wanted the court to have for your consideration as you impose sentence today.
And you know, what YouTube tried to do to this guy, you know, in the process of trying to bring Chris Watts another trial, was, in all honesty, ridiculous. They tried to claim that he was in cahoots with Anadarko, that he's corrupt, that he was paid off by the oil company to cover up the real conspiracy, which was that Anadarko tried to was going to blow itself up to free itself from other things. I mean, it was what YouTube did in this case. I will never fail to be just blown away by. Every single person in this case was picked apart, just morsel by morsel, hair by hair, pore by pore, including this guy. And he never, and he's gone on to talk. He went on a podcast with his wife talking about it all.
They may allude to those, and I've asked them to do so by way of sentencing exhibit number. But that's the sum and substance of exhibits 1 through 21.
Thank you. And you have individuals who would like to make a statement?
I do. Your Honor, if I could first call upon Frank Rusick to join me at the podium.
Thank you.
So here's Shanann's father, and you know, be prepared.
Good morning, Mr. Rusick.
Good morning.
This is emotional.
Well, I'd like to say to the courts that Shannon, Bella, and Nico are loving, caring people. They love life. They love being around people who love them. They always had good times. This is the first time they went to the beach this year, and they loved it. But God only knows what happened that night. Life will never be the same without Shannon, Bella, and Celeste and Nico.
Look at Chris back there. So this is him for the first time seeing that Frank knows that he killed Frank's daughter and his grandchildren. And all he can do is sit there and bite his lip and look down.
Had all their lives to live. They were This is the heartless one, the evil monster. Who dare you take the lives of my daughter?
And now you've called him an evil monster. And I'm gonna take that back a little bit. You see him, that's when he really starts to kind of fold in on himself. You can't see me as an evil monster. No.
By a heartless one. This is the heartless one, the evil monster. Who dare you take the lives of my daughter Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and
you could barely see it, but he moves and he's like, oh, I've been called an evil monster by my father-in-law. How dare he? I can't believe he sees me this way. And he's still trying to maintain this kind of like, this air of, he's almost looking like he thinks he's a martyr, right? He's a martyr because I just confessed to all of this just to make it all go away so that people would stop worrying, so that I could just go away forever. As if he's a martyr. He's not a martyr.
Nico, I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you, the heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash. You disgust me. They were loving and caring people You may have taken their bodies from me, but you will never take the love they had from me. They loved us more than you will ever know, because you don't know what love is, because if you did, you would not have killed them. You monster, thought you would get away with this.
I agree, Just Don. He's embarrassed. He's ashamed. He wants to get it over with. He doesn't want to be there. But also, I also read kind of martyr. Like he's trying to play a different. There's a different face he's showing to all kinds of different people. He's showing one face. He's trying to show one face to the Ruseks. He's trying to show a whole other face to his own family who's there too. It's just crazy.
I don't know how. The cameras do not lie. You carry them out like trash of the house. Yes, I seen the videotape. You buried my daughter Shannon and Nico in a shallow grave, and then you put Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster. You have crude oil. You heartless monster. Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster.
That was powerful. You heartless monster. I mean, that, and his voice even cracks when he says that. You heartless monster. That he was able to even get through this is amazing.
You have to live with this vision every day of your life. And I hope you see that every time you close your eyes at night. Oh, I forgot. You have no heart or feelings or love. Let me tell you something. I will think of them every day of my life. And I love them every day of my life. Prison is too good for you. This is hard to say, but may God have mercy on your soul.
For people like me who are just sitting here watching this and angry at Chris Watts, it was very satisfying to hear the father of Shanann say these things to him. I mean, I just got to say.
I hope you enjoy your new life. It's nothing like the one you had out here. May the courts have no mercy on you. It's hard every day. It hurts in so many ways. I have heard people say that you're not a monster. No, you are not. You're an evil monster. Thank you. Love you, Shannon, Bella, and Nico. Love you, Pop and Dad. And one other thing. And Shannon says she is super excited for justice today. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
And Chris doesn't even look at him as he walks by.
Sure.
Doesn't even look at him, and this guy puts his arm around him as if to console him. Now, I guess that's his job, but oh, poor little Chris.
Frankie Rusick Jr.
Or Will.
He has asked me to read his statement for him, but he would like to stand with me if that's okay.
Of course. Sir, if I can just have you state your name for the record.
Frankie Rusick Jr.
Thank you for being here.
Your Honor, the past 3 months, I barely slept because I've been going through a lot of different emotions because I did not see this coming. You went from being my brother, my sister's protector, one of the most loved people in my family, to someone I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand.
See how Chris has now even pushed his head further down and forward, and his shoulders are even more tense. He's more tense now. Because now here's, in my belief, he has just been called an evil monster by his father-in-law, now his brother-in-law, who he probably, my understanding is that Frankie Jr. and Chris were like bros. They were friends. They really got along with each other. They were all beloved. This is family, right? Just like what I showed earlier with the Alex Murdaugh, you hurt the people you love the most sometimes, and oh man.
Understand. What gave you the right to put your hands on a woman, let alone my best friend, my beloved sister, your daughters, and your son? Why weren't they enough for you? In the blink of an eye, you took away my whole world, the people that mattered to me the most. Everything in my life I loved, your children. They trusted you. They loved you. They looked up to you because you promised to keep them safe. Instead, you turned on your family. My blood is boiling as I write these last words because they are the last you will ever hear from me. I can't even think of the right words to describe the betrayal and the hate I feel. And to be honest, you aren't even worth the time and effort it takes to put my pen to this paper. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't cry for my family. They were my whole world. All I do is ask myself why. Why would you do this? You don't deserve to be called a man. What kind of person slaughters the people that love them the most? Did you really think you would get away with this? Did you really think that this was your best option, to throw away your family like they were garbage? They deserve better, and you know it.
He still thinks sometimes he's going to get away with it. Oh my gosh. Welcome to those who are just coming in.
I hope you spend the rest of your life staring at the ceiling every night, being haunted by what you've done. None of us deserved this. Hearing my mother and father cry themselves to sleep in this hotel.
So we have heard since, this time that he does feel haunted by all of this. But he wavers in between, haunted by what I did and haunted by the by just the deaths themselves. He tries to pretend that he can't remember certain instances, like he remembers everything up until, oh, conveniently. Hello, Amelia. Yeah, there's no E. Anyway, like he wavers in between. I'm haunted by all of this too, but I don't remember it. I don't remember the specifically. I don't remember the specific instance of the killings, but I remember things leading up to it. I vaguely remember somebody else being there. I mean, this guy has just this deep cowardice of not being able to take any responsibility for anything he does.
Hotel room causes me anguish that is beyond words. I can't describe how this feels, how badly my heart is breaking for my poor parents. We trusted you. You have taken away my family from this earth, but you can never take them from my heart. You took away my privilege of being an uncle to the most precious little girls I've ever known. I will never hear the words Uncle Frankie again, but you will never be called Dad again either. You'll never be able to put your hands on another woman, let alone my best friend, my beloved sister, and your son. I just can't comprehend how they weren't enough for you. Shanann, Bella, and Cece loved you more than anyone. You were their hero. How could you destroy the people who loved them the most? I pray that you never have a moment's peace or a good night's rest in the cage you'll spend every day of your life in. A cage you are privileged to live in because my family isn't evil like you. We beg the district attorney to spare your life.
And you could just tell right here that Frankie is just barely holding it together, right? He wants to just explode. If he could turn around and jump Chris, and I've never heard him say this, but you could see that if he could just turn around and jump Chris and take him down, he would. It's so intense. He's vibrating with pain here. You could see it.
Despite everything, we believe that no one has the right to take the life of another, even someone like you. I feel sorry for your family. I know the pain that they must feel knowing that they can't hug you, because that's how my mother, father, and I feel every time we cry for our family. Nothing hurts more than watching or hearing my family weep for their loved ones. I just wish that I could tell that you would tell the truth, but I know that is asking for more than you are capable of. I stayed up all night writing this statement. I don't sleep because of you. My life will never be the same because of you, but at least my conscience is clear. I get
just look at that, the pain on his face. And the reason I'm interested in how all of this plays out in a courtroom is because, in the courtroom is where you have to put on your best behavior, really, to get the fairest outcome, right? Everybody's, there's destinies on the line here. And, Frankie knows that if he acts out, if he does anything, then, it doesn't bode well for him. It doesn't bode well for whatever is going to come down the line. It's not going to change that his sister and his nieces are gone. So, but you could see how anyone would want to just jump out of their skin at this point.
To live free, but I can't say the same for you. I haven't slept in 2 days because I've been anxiously waiting for this moment, the moment I get to tell you how I feel, how this has affected my family and I. My family and I can finally grieve after today. If anything, we will come out of this stronger today than we were before, and we will.
And just notice how incredibly quiet it is in the room. It's incredibly quiet. It's very tense. People are barely moving.
We'll continue to pray for your family. Sincerely, Frankie Rusick.
Thank you, Jameson.
And that, again, Chris doesn't even look up to see his brother-in-law walk by. Frankie looks at him, and I have a recollection of Frankie saying that coward didn't even have the courage to look at me in that room.
Your Honor, Sandy Rusick would like to address the court.
Here comes Shanann's mom.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you for this moment.
I can just have you just identify yourself for the record.
My name is Sandra Rusak, Shannon's mother.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for this moment.
Chris's head's even going lower, even lower. As she stood up there, he bit his lip.
I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has prayed for our beloved family, who has sent gifts, cards to us from all over the world. I know God will put the evil people where they need to be. I also want to take the time to thank the town of Frederick, Greeley, FBI, the DA's office, the CBI.
In an interview with Dr. Phil after all of this took place, she said that she felt Shanann the night that she died coming to her. So they had a strong spiritual community.
For exceptional work. We thank Nicole Atkinson, Shannon's neighbor Nathan, and his family. To me, they're our heroes. They really are. God bless. God makes no mistakes on who he puts in your life. Marriage is about love, trust, and friendship and unity. We marry for sickness and health, to death do us part. Our daughter Shannon loved you with all of her heart. Your children loved you to the moon and back. Shannon's family was her world. Shannon put a crown on your head. But unfortunately, the day that you took their life, God removed that crown. We loved you like a son. We trusted you. Your faithful wife trusted you. Your children adored you, and they also trusted you. Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. I don't know if you got to see it, but it was Daddy, You're My Hero.
That Daddy, You're My Hero was the opening video, the opening clip of the Netflix documentary. If you haven't watched it, it's called American Murder. Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but and it's heartbreaking because it was done just literally weeks before he killed her. Weeks.
I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives.
Nobody.
But I know God and his mighty angels were there at that moment to bring them home to paradise. God gives us free will. So not only did you take the family of four, your family of four, you took your own life. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. I want your family of four. You took your own life.
That was a wise statement. He did. What did he think? It was like what it was either Frankie or Frank said. Did you think you were going to get away with this? I think Frankie said it. Did you think you were going to get away with this? And and in a press conference, the DA said, "How about divorce? How about divorce?" So, when people kill their spouses because they want to get out of a marriage for somebody else, and they don't think they're going to get caught, it just blows my mind that there's no deterrent to that. Blows my mind.
I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. There will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you. From Shannon.
And if you don't know this, Chris claims to be very, a very, very, very deep Christian. Whoever he talks to in jail, he's constantly quoting Bible verses. People, his former cellmates who have come out and talked about being in prison with him, say he's, trying to write books about Christianity and the Bible and daily thoughts and things like that, as if we would want those kinds of things from a family annihilator. It's just absolutely redonkulous to me. But at the time of the murders, he was not a religious person at all.
And his mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lee's Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Doesn't even look at her. Doesn't even look. Are you okay?
Your Honor, that's all the witnesses that I had intended on calling. I know that the court addressed this during the procedural posture. I am aware that Mr. and Mrs. Watts would also like to address.
He doesn't even want to, that's trauma punks. That's basically jailhouse. He got his jailhouse religion, right? I mean, if only religion could not be exploited the way it is. But I just find it so cowardly that Shanann's family, each one of them, has walked past him and looked at him, and he won't even look at them. He can take their entire family's life, but not look at them.
Address the court. I would certainly invite the court, if you want, at this point to call.
And now, so I'm pretty sure now that he's in full cry mode. Like, he's starting to cry, but he doesn't want to bring attention to himself. So he doesn't wipe his tears. He doesn't get a Kleenex or anything. He just keeps letting the tears fall. And then he uses, he contorts his face to lick the tears off of his mouth and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. And I've heard him say, I think afterward, that he was basically dissociating during this entire thing. Of course, there's always a very convenient explanation. And maybe he was, but not because you're a victim of anything, Mr. Watts. Trauma Punk says his family keeps his narcissistic flame alight. That is how he can go on even teaching. I totally agree.
Upon them, or we can certainly do it after any evidence that the defense has as well.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Cindy or Ronnie.
I remember that when I remember watching this in real time. how the camera panned down to show how his knee was shaking. And I'm like, oh, the camera knows what to watch for.
Watts wish to make a statement for the Victims' Rights Amendment.
All right, so
Good morning, Ms. Powers.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And if I can have you.
So what you're seeing here is a victim advocate in the middle, and then Ronnie and Cindy Watts. And what Ronnie and Cindy Watts say about this entire segment here is that, they did not authorize this woman to say any of the things that she said, that they don't agree with anything she said, that they were completely written out of the entire situation. They had no control over it whatsoever. And so what you need to watch for are the cues of like, you almost see Cindy wanting to stop her mid statement from speaking because she's so angered by what is being said on their behalf. And I don't know what they thought that a victim advocate was supposed to do. I find it highly doubtful that this victim advocate just said, if you were to believe the Watts, this woman told them that she was going to say one thing and then went in and told a completely different thing. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. Rarely anything that the Watts have said have come true, in my experience.
You folks introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Cindy Watts.
Ron Watts.
Thank you. And I have authorized you to make a statement to the court as paternal grandparents of the children. And if you choose not to make a statement, but your designee, Ms. Powers, chooses to, she.
The other context here is that my understanding is that they had to fight to be considered actual victims. And they are, I do consider them victims because it was their grandchildren. But they were also the parents of the murderer, right? Of the confessed murderer. So I think that they felt like they were isolated out from the decision making of what was going to happen to Chris, because they weren't going to bring them along on every point and decision making, because they were his parents and they don't know whether they had any involvement in it or conspiring with him or whatever, right? But they consider themselves victims, and they were rightfully allowed to come in as victims, but they did have to have a victim. To do that, they needed to have a victim advocate. But for them to tell it, they say that this victim advocate completely misrepresented their thoughts and feelings and how it should be.
You can do so as well. How would you like to proceed
Can I
today?
read that? I want you to start.
Who's going to be speaking today?
Your Honor, initially, they've asked me and they're hoping that they have the strength to speak, but if they do not, they've written out their statements and asked me to finish for them. So
That would be fine. Who would like to go first?
if I could start, Your Honor. On behalf of the Watts, Your Honor, and to the community, we thank you for the opportunity and the recognition under the Victim Bill of Rights.
So you see that, at first Cindy's like, can you read that? And she's like, well, I'm going to read this first. And Cindy says, well, I want to read this. So I think, there's like two different statements. And so what you'll see is that the victim advocate says what she's going to say. And then Cindy gets up and says her thing. And maybe by this time she knows that this victim advocate is going to try to speak on their behalf, and she doesn't agree with everything. So she wants to counter it with it. Like, we never know all the things that happen behind the scenes and leading up to this, but the two things that they say are not consistent with each other. I agree, trauma punks.
We come today as the grandparents and the parent of the daughter and children whose life was taken in this case. We are not here to ask for leniency. We are not in any way condoning or tolerating the crime that has occurred and the pain that has been caused.
And you see here, Cindy's beginning to panic. You're saying we don't condone, wait, you're making it sound like he's guilty. We don't think he's guilty. You see her starting to panic here, right?
We join in our daughter-in-law and grandchildren's family in saying this should never have happened. This is not condonable. This is something that we will never get over.
And remember now, hey, Jay Friday, good to see you. Yeah, I repurposed this channel. It used to be trauma and true crime. I want to do just analyzing people's court appearances, past and current. So anyway, remember as this woman is saying these things, things like, this should never have happened. This was a terrible act, that Cindy said, we didn't agree with one word that woman said. We like the way Cindy and hi, Gianna Marie, the way Cindy and Ronnie talked about this woman, it's as if she committed the murders herself. She was such a terrible, corrupt, horrible human being.
We appreciate the consideration that everyone has paid, most especially the families that have lost everyone. We appreciate that they begged for Christopher's life. We agree and echo what they have said, that it is not his place to take anyone's life, nor would it be our place as a community to take his life. So we thank you for the opportunity and for every consideration and effort that's been put out. The prosecution in this case has in fact respected the Victim Bill of Rights. They took the time to explain that the information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed. They were searching for answers. They were not intending to cause any pain.
Look how low that head has gone now, Chris. There should be like a Chris's head placement meter. Yeah, I know, Amelia. It was ridiculous. Anyway, look at like his head is as lowest as it has been in that room, because now his parents are up there and this advocate is agreeing with what the other people have said.
Pain to anyone, and they appreciate that the prosecution answered their questions and gave them the time and the respect and the consideration so that they could tell this court and everyone in this community that the interview content was not their message, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept.
Now they're talking about these interviews that they gave after, like, they literally went from him being taking it, him pleading guilty and being remanded to like out of a barrel doing these interviews, completely not prepared, totally unprepared, no idea what they're doing. These are very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? These are people who are not worldly, okay? They have been living in a small community in North Carolina all their lives. They've never been exposed to anything like this, right? And then they get shot out of a barrel from their son being on national news and pleading guilty. And then they do give these interviews saying, what a terrible person Shanann is, basically, and how he couldn't have done this, right? He couldn't have killed his children, and alluding to Shanann basically deserving it because she was so, deserving what he did to her because she was killing. So they're trying to denounce the things now that the victim advocate is trying to denounce what they said in these interviews. And again, Cindy's sitting there going, hell no, bitch. I did believe that.
That he chose to plead guilty, that he sought and requested their consent and agreement for a life sentence. They appreciate that he is given the opportunity to serve that life sentence. It is his responsibility. It is his sentence, and it is not enough to make up for what has done. We understand and we join the family in that we have questions.
Right, Trauma Punks, you say, he's such a covert narcissist, he could not stand trial. They are truly dangerous cowards. Right. I mean, look how he's behaving here. He could barely, he's outside of himself not wanting to be there. Imagine if there was an entire trial. I have a certain amount of sympathy for them, but I do not understand why they continue to assert that he should, that there should be any leniency on him. I just don't get it. Yeah. I think a lot of people would have loved to see an actual trial, and that's why there was such a push for it. But the thing, people are like, we felt ripped off, we wanted to see a trial. Well, sorry, but we don't, justice is not for us. Justice is for the victims, right? It's for the people who were affected by this. This isn't for us. We don't have the right to say we were ripped off, we wanted to see a trial, we need answers. Sorry, but that's just not how it works.
We don't know how such a thing could possibly happen, or that a man that was responsible for raising his children and protecting his wife would take the steps that he did, and that he would disregard their bodies and the love that he had for them and they had for him and everyone else, and take the gestures and put this community through the investigation and the discovery and the responsibility of bringing justice. We do not understand that. We do not think it was appropriate. We cannot begin to think that an explanation will ever justify it. My clients indicate that they understand that a full opportunity for a confession with all of the responsibility and accountability has not occurred. And they support the family and the request that happen, if not today, at an appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, so that everyone can have peace.
So what she's saying is, hey, we basically don't know everything. We haven't heard a full confession. We only have this one confession where he says that, on video, there hasn't been a trial. We would like to see a full confession. So then what happens is, those of you who have followed this case, this is happening in November. This hearing is happening in November 2018. In February, the following February 2019, the detectives from Colorado travel up to Wisconsin and they get a full confession from him. They get a full confession from him, and it's a completely different confession. And he tells an entire story about what he did to to his wife, his pregnant wife, and his children. And this confession just happened to happen, in the weeks before the Ruseks were going to be on Dr. Phil, right? And there was other stuff going on. So point being that the Watts were saying, we would like a full confession to be afforded. Well, a full confession was afforded, and people still didn't believe it. They still didn't believe it. So they can say all they want about, we want the truth, we want the truth. No, when they hear the truth, they reject the truth, and they still believe in their minds that whatever scenario they want to believe, and that he should get some sort of leniency.
To understand to the best of their ability the details that they need and to have their questions answered. And by giving this opportunity of a life sentence, we hope that he embraces that moment, that had the death penalty been pursued, there would not have been an opportunity.
And also, let's not forget that he wrote in letters with Cheryl Cadle, and she's still profiting off of her visits to him and her letters with him, where he makes other confessions. But in every confession he's made since then, where it's, where he somehow believes that he's just talking to somebody and it's not going to get out there, he confesses to all the killings. But then when he talks to other people, he talks about not remembering things. It's just lunacy. It's just lunacy.
Opportunity to be accountable and to give a full confession. And had the death penalty been sought, counsel would have fought for his life. The prosecutors would have been engaged in a multiple-year battle. The families would have been torn apart. This community would have had to subsidize it and endure it. And we have so much respect and gratefulness that that did not happen. We would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel. We feel that it would be appropriate and helpful to ease the pain and the suffering. But we also say, we don't think that there's anything that he can say that will ever account for his behavior. There's nothing that can be done to cure the harm he has caused. And he has the responsibility to serve his sentence with dignity and with regard for everyone, and to spend every breath that he has left in an atonement for what he has done. Do you want to read it? Yes.
If I could just have you state your name for the record.
So Cindy's like, when is this lady going to shut up so I can say what I want to say, which is completely different.
Cindy Watts.
Thank you.
My name is Cindy Watts. I am the grandmother of two beautiful granddaughters, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine Watts. I am also the mother of Christopher Watts, who I will be directing most of my statement to. First, I'd like to begin by recognizing the absolute horror of this crime.
So, in all fairness to Cindy here, she wants to direct a lot of what she's saying to him because she hasn't gotten to talk to him very much. She felt left out of the process. So I think she feels like this is one of her only chances to really get a strong message to him.
And acknowledging the devastating loss that both the Rusek family as well as our family have faced. Our families have been irreparably broken by the needless deaths of Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. This is something we will never get over. We will always mourn the loss of our family, and in that, we are united in our grief. I am still struggling to understand how and why this tragedy occurred. I may never be able to understand and accept it, but I pray for peace and healing for all of us.
You could see Chris is really, really struggling here to hold it together. He's probably in full shake mode. You can almost see it.
Now to my son, Christopher. I have known you since the day you were born into this world. I have watched you grow from a quiet and sweet, curious child who Bella reminded me so much of, to a young man who worked hard in sports and later mechanics to achieve your goals. You are a good friend, brother, father, and son. We have loved you from the beginning, and we still love you now.
And I just sit here feeling sorry for myself that I have to hear my parents saying these things to me. in a court.
This might be hard for some to understand how I can sit here under these circumstances and tell you, although we are heartbroken, although we can't imagine what could have led us to this day, but we love you. Maybe you can't believe it either. As the Lord said in Jeremiah 3:31, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I have continued my faithfulness to you. And you, as your mother, Chris, I have always loved you, and I still do. I hate what has happened. Your father and sister and I are struggling to understand why. But we will remain faithful as your family, just as God remains faithful because of his unconditional love for us all. We love you. And we forgive you, son.
Let's watch that again. She turns around. Let's watch that again.
Forgive you, son. Oh, we love you. And we forgive you, son.
She turns around and says, "We forgive you, son." He doesn't even look at his own mother saying, "We forgive you."
Thank you.
And I think she's even more hurt that he didn't even look at her than anything that she just said.
If I could read Mr. Watts' statement.
Yes.
My name is Ronnie Watts, and I am the grandfather of Bella, Celeste, Nico Watts, and I am the father of Shannon. I am the father of Christopher Watts as well. And when
he's about to, like, he's about to break down, because now these are the words from his father, and his mother just turned around and said, "We forgive you," and he knows that he doesn't even deserve it. He doesn't deserve his forgiveness or their forgiveness.
one of the most important things I've done in my life is to raise my children and to watch as they started their own families. I spent many years coaching Little League and talking to my son, taking him to the races, and sharing my love and knowledge of cars with him. He was just as involved with his girls. I believe he loves his girls.
That was a deep connection between him and Ronnie, where the cars thing, their thing with cars. And you could see his face change even at the mention of the cars. That's an emotional thing. The cars.
I know he does. This tragedy has impacted my family in so many ways. Beyond losing my precious grandchildren, our beloved daughter-in-law, we are forced to question everything. We still don't have all the answers, and I hope one day, Christopher, you can help us. Chris, I want to talk to you as a father and son. You are here today accepting responsibility, but I want to tell you this now. I love you. Nothing will ever change that. And I want you to find peace. And today is your first step. The Bible says if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just and will forgive us. Chris, I forgive you, and your sister forgives you, and we will never abandon you, and we love you. Dad. Judge, thank you for the opportunity.
That's true. They have not abandoned him, and that's good. I mean, that's a nice thing. But you can be there for somebody even when they're a murderer and not condone what they've done and not ignore what they've done.
To address the court.
Are there any other?
He doesn't even watch them. He doesn't even look at them as they walk by. He doesn't look anybody in the eye.
Statutory victims under the Victims' Rights Act that would like to make a statement today?
Your Honor, I'm not aware of any.
For the record, nobody is raising their hand. Mr. Walsh, would you like to present any evidence? We have no evidence, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Walker, is there any statements you would like to make on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, please.
Look, you can see the
Statements you would like to make on behalf of the.
Oh, see, he's in full cry mode. You can see all the tears streaming down his face. The first time he actually looks up is when he knows that none of his family members are standing there. He can't even look at them. What does that say about this human being? That you have the courage to kill your entire family, but you don't have the courage. I mean, what did you think would happen after you killed your entire family? That everybody would just forget that they existed? Nothing would happen. There might be just a little missing persons investigation, then everything would be all good in the hood. What did he think was going to happen? It just blows me away.
Prosecution.
Yes, please. Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who are a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how? Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today.
And that aged well, right? He says, I fully expect that we will never receive the answer to these questions today. And that's true, because we can't believe a freaking word that man says. Even the stories he does tell about, when he admits to all the killings, get holes poked in them, right?
Nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened.
Nope.
Or why.
Nope.
Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives, not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what.
So for Chris to say that there was an emotional conversation, he's going to downplay everything because he doesn't know how to read emotions. So it was probably an explosive conversation, right?
What their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that.
And that is still in dispute. Did he strangle her? Did he smother her? We don't know really for sure. We don't know really for sure. Some people say he held his finger over her carotid artery after she went to sleep. There are stories that he got on top of her and strangled her with his hands. We still don't know for sure, really, what happened.
That he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum.
Now he's getting now the real tears are coming. And this guy is describing, and he may not be describing in perfect detail exactly what happened, but he's describing what Chris did to his own children. And I don't see Chris feeling sorry for what he did. I see Chris feeling sorry for being caught doing what he did. That's what I see.
Had a 1.5 centimeter laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died.
And he knows, he's remembering that fight. Bella, he's sitting there remembering that however he was killing her, she fought back. And what she did and what she said. He later told somebody that she said, "Daddy, no. Daddy, no." Unbelievable.
She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless.
I think you're right, Kay.
The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera, backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any. So in a subsequent confession, he said that he killed the girls at the site, that he put Shanann in the car and then put the girls in and drove to the site and then killed them there. And
Of course, the shadow man, armchair detective, says he can prove that the girls were alive because there were shadows, and he can prove that Nicole Kessinger was there because he thinks he sees her shadow. Whether any of that's true doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. The point is that these children were killed by their father, right? Yeah. Here we go.
Any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar.
Look at the look on Chris's face now. You know, how on earth did he think that his wife and children would never be found where he works? That's one of the stupidest things. I mean, that does go to show you that he probably didn't kill before, right? That 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 this is something he was doing to get his side thing, right? Because who kills their family and then, oh, hey, Sybil, who kills their family and then thinks that a good place to hide them is where he works? And in case you don't know this, the truck that he used to drive, excuse me, hold on a minute. The truck that he, no brains, no headaches, that's funny. The truck that he used to drive from his house to Anadarko to dispose of his family had GPS monitoring on it from the company. It was a company truck. It was a company truck. So this guy thinks he's going to use a company truck with GPS tracking because they're not supposed to use their company truck for personal things. That's one of the reasons it had GPS tracking. It was closely monitored. So, he possibly thought, well, I can just, this is the only car I can use, and I would be using it in the normal course of business, and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. I can't. That just shows how desperate this guy, he's supposed to be a smart guy, right? But it shows how desperate he was to get to do this and get away with it. That he was willing to use his GPS tracked work truck and bury his family and kids where he worked. Yeah, and I agree with that too, Trauma Punks. He thought no one would suspect him. He thought, oh, I'm this nice family guy. I've never done anything wrong. I'm this wonderful citizen and people love me. They'll never think I did anything. I'll never get caught. But it also just goes to show what a, inexperienced murderer he is, basically, to think that.
He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it. He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains
back there going,
to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations.
Yep.
He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant.
Look at him folding in on himself there. You did that, Chris Watts. You did that. And you still want us to look at you as if you're some, all-American guy?
It told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his coworkers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughters sank in the oil and water not far away from him.
Oh, God.
And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media, asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends, and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies.
God, that just kills me.
Or the victim assistants who frantically attempted to ease the suffering of those affected.
These were the parts that killed me the most, was watching the faces of the family. The unimaginable pain of having to sit through this description. And then that cowardly, sniveling murderer sitting just feet away. Acting like he feels sorry for himself.
All of this, Your Honor, for what? Why? Why did this have to happen? His motive was simple, Your Honor. He had a desire for a fresh start, to begin a relationship with a new love that overpowered all decency and feelings for his wife, his daughters, and unborn son. While Shanann texted the defendant over and over again in the days and weeks leading up to her death, attempting to save her marriage, the defendant secreted pictures of his girlfriend into his phone and texted her at all hours of the night. While Shanann sent the defendant self-help and relationship counseling books, one of which, ironically enough, was thrown in the garbage, he was searching the internet for secluded vacation spots to take his new love in researching jewelry.
Kay, I don't think they spent time together. I don't remember them spending any time together. I think they spent a lot of time on the phone together. They did talk a lot. There was like an 111-minute phone call, if I recall correctly, basically the night that everybody was reported missing. Yeah, because the cops were pretty much at the house. Pretty much Nicole Atkinson thwarted their ability to spend any more time together because she goes to the house, Nan's not there, and basically gets the ball rolling and he had to rush back from doing the burial and then people meeting him there at work, to get work started. He had to rush back because Nicole Atkinson is freaking out because Shanann's not there for her doctor's appointment. So I think he probably they were planning to take a trip to Aspen together or something. That never happened.
And while Shanann took the girls to visit family in North Carolina, the defendant went to car museums and the sand dunes with his new girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
The stark contrast between the subjects of their internet and text content is absolutely stunning. Even the morning after he killed them and disposed of their bodies, he made several phone calls. One was to the school where the girls were supposed to start, telling the school that the girls would not be coming to school anymore, that they were being unenrolled, presumably to give him some more time before law enforcement notification about them going missing. He contacted a realtor to start discussing the selling of his house, and he texted with his girlfriend about their future. None of this answers the questions of why, however. If he was this happy and wanted a new start, get a divorce. You don't annihilate your family and throw them away like garbage. Why did Nico, Celeste, Bella, and Shanann have to lose their lives in order for him to get what he wanted? Your Honor, justice demands the maximum sentence under the agreement reached by the parties. As you will recall, the agreement calls for life sentences as to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and all of those to run consecutively to one another. It also calls for the count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy as to Nico to run consecutively to counts 1, 2, and 3. I would suggest that the extreme aggravation present in the defendant's conduct and in the efforts that I have described mandate that the sentences for counts 7, 8, and 9, the tampering with a deceased human body, each be the maximum of 12 years, and that those sentences run consecutively to one another. It is very clear that each of these acts, that these were not the subject of one act, but each oil tank that he walked up with his daughter's bodies and the hole that he dug for his wife and unborn son mandate a mandatory consecutive sentence. It's been alluded to this morning, but the defendant was eligible for the death penalty in this case under the existing law in the state of Colorado. As you heard, Shanann's family strongly opposed my office seeking the death penalty and being bound to the criminal justice system for the next several decades. That's in large part, as you've heard, why we have reached the agreement that we have. 4 lives were lost at the hands of the defendant on August 13th.
In an interview since this time, he has said that he in large part agreed with not pursuing the death penalty, but not because he would have pursued it if there was a different political environment. If politically they would have been able to push the death penalty through in Colorado or get it supported politically, or with a governor who would have supported it, he would have pushed for it. So I thought that was interesting.
Reasons that we will never fully understand, nor will we know. In the end, the Rusick family was much more merciful towards him than he was towards his wife, his daughters, and his unborn son.
Yeah, great.
Prison for the remainder of his life is exactly where he belongs for murdering his entire family. Thank you.
Are you seeking 91 days to file a request for restitution?
I am, Your Honor, please.
I'll grant that request. Mr. Walls, will you be speaking on behalf of your client?
Your Honor, Ms. Harold.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Harold.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mr. Watts has asked us to share this morning that he is devastated by all of this. And although he understands that words are hollow at this point, he is sincerely sorry for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, wow. Jesus. Words are hollow. I'm sincerely sorry. I can't say it myself. I'm not enough of I'm a covert narcissist, not a flamboyant narcissist. Jeez.
Mr. Watts, as I indicated when we began, you have the right to make a statement if you choose to.
No.
Would you like to make a statement?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Thank you.
No, sir.
So the court has considered the arguments made by the attorneys. The court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rusick family as well as the Watts family that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood. And I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen.
I thought that was a pretty. Which part didn't you know, Sybil? I thought it was pretty strong for, this guy's been on the bench for a long time, and you hear people say, this is, the most. You hear them say it all the time. This is the most blah blah I've ever seen, but I get the sense that this judge is, not playing this up. He's not speaking for the cameras. He's actually saying this is probably the most inhumane thing I've ever seen. And I think that's why this case really touched so many people. Like, how can you just dispose of your wife and children in that way? I think he was a ticking time guard regarding years of tell him what to do in NK just a minute. Yeah. There are just other ways to deal with your inside being a ticking time bomb, as you know.
And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate. And anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree.
Yeah, I talked about Alex Murdaugh earlier. He did say he was sorry. He also took the, I see Alex Murdaugh as a completely different type of toxic personality. He's going to take any opportunity he can to manipulate, and that's what he did yesterday. And yes, he said he was sorry. He did it while completely pulling on the emotional bonds that he had with these people. Oh, we've had so many great times together. Remember the time we did this, and remember the time we did that. And he didn't think about any of that when he was frauding them, and he wasn't sorry until he got caught and had to come to a plea deal. It was the most disingenuous. Yeah, he's not a covert one. But he still insists that he didn't do the murders, right? So he had to also take the opportunity of his apologies to say, I also didn't murder anybody. So I found that interesting. I think I might go over that on Friday on this channel, unless something else more interesting happens. So here we go.
As it relates to Shanann Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed with no possibility of parole.
Yeah.
And that is going to run consecutively
Yeah.
to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole.
That's right. Your life is over, sir.
With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard,
I don't have I don't have like a set time of day schedule plan, but generally I'm thinking I might do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for streaming on this, because I also need to set some time aside to do videos for my other channel. Oh, okay. Thanks, Sybil. The political part is what you didn't know. So I'm thinking Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but the times may not be uniform. I may not always, like today I started at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Sometimes I might go 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock Pacific time. It kind of depends on where I'm at. So I hope that helps to answer that question. And he started crying basically when his parents got up there and started, talking.
regard to count number 7 as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts.
He's crying for himself.
The court is going.
Whenever he's crying, he's always crying for himself. He doesn't cry for anybody else. That's my opinion.
Going to order that statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution.
It's so heartbreaking.
And that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies on allowing people to exit the courtroom, so please remain seated until you are authorized to leave the courtroom based on the direction of the deputies. Deputies, I would respectfully ask that you take this.
Let's watch him skulk out. Skulk. My understanding, okay, there's a little bit of context to this. So you see Ronnie and Cindy there in the back. He told somebody that he thought he saw Nicole Kessinger in the court as he was walking out. Like he saw her peeking around the corner or something. When he was trying to paint her as like collaborating with police to bring him down, he made it sound like she was there skulking around. I don't think that's true, but okay, here we go.
Please rise.
I find it funny the way he walks. I don't know if he's walking that way because he's shackled, but he didn't seem to walk that way in, other videos where he's like, he walks with his entire body and slouched over, and he doesn't look at anybody, not one person. Well, it's over, friends. It's finally over, at least that one. Yep. They probably all wanted to jump over and hurt him. Well, that's basically it. That was the sentencing. And as we know, so much has happened since then, as I talked about at the beginning of the stream. Even after this, the Watts have refused to believe that any of his confessions where he says he did it, that he actually did it. They started working with Lana Oriani of Truth and Transparency on this nonprofit, then later claimed that she forged their digital signatures and they never knew that they were on the board of her nonprofit. But ostensibly what they believed her sales job, that she was going to raise all this money so they could get a lawyer, the best lawyers in Colorado, to get him a post-conviction hearing. Never happened. None of their efforts have ever come through. All of their efforts have always been thwarted by bullshit. There was a Chris Watts impersonator, a woman who came on and said that she was in touch with Chris Watts and claimed to have all these letters from Chris Watts. And we find out, and this is all covered on Alex Erickson's channel, that she was the one sending the letters herself. She even went so far as to pretend to be a famous lawyer who was going to take him on so that she could get money out of people to pay for his legal defense. So even after the sham of a nonprofit didn't work out, other people tried to scam money for his legal defense behind the scenes, pretending to be him, pretending to be his lawyer. It's and there are still channels. There are still channels who get, a lot of traction. Really defending Chris Watts. And I see a lot of this coming down in the Idaho 4 case. The poor Idaho 4 murders, those poor children who were murdered in their beds, in my opinion, most likely by Brian Kohberger, all the victims, the living victims in that situation, are going to have to live through years and years of people defending Brian Kohberger. So luckily there are also channels who don't believe it. So, and will, fight to see both sides rather than just seeing one side and victim blaming. So anyway, I do appreciate you all being here with me today. I will continue streaming court appearances as they happen, and looking back at interesting court appearances and going through them. I would love to get your suggestions as which kinds of court cases you would like to see me go through. I'm planning to go live on Friday. At this point on the docket is the Alex Murdaugh financial crime sentencing hearing, because it was just full blown manipulation all the way through, and there was so much to it. So thanks for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Please remember to hit the thumbs up on your way out. This channel is not monetized because I lost monetization by letting the channel be dormant for over a year. So I need to get my watch hours up. So please, help me with my watch hours. And if you have an inclination to donate, there is a donate link in the description. I do plan, this will be a live channel from now on, Sybil. So thank you very much, and I will see you soon. Bye.